Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Spanish Sling, a podcast where we try to bridge the gap between the Spanish and Singaporean companies and encourage economic relations between them. Today we want to explore the consultancy sector in Singapore, and this is why we bring today as a guest Alex Pont, associate at Oliver Wyman. So Alex, I want to discuss the consultancy sector in Singapore.
Sure.
But first of all, for the listeners who are maybe not familiar or know what a really consultant do. So what is the role of a consultant and what is the main goal?
That's a really good question and something that a lot of people have asked me back home.
Yeah.
I think the analogy that I use to describe it is like consultants are the doctors to businesses. So in the same way that as a patient you go to a doctor to get diagnosed and get a treatment, consultants go to companies to diagnose that they come with a problem to them and they have to diagnose, analyze the problem, and then come up with recommendations and solutions on the best way forward for the companies. So that's the best way.
But it's such a beautiful metaphor.
It's a good metaphor. The problems can be very varied. So it can be from, say, a market entry, right? A company that wants to grow outside their home country, and they come to a consultant to say, okay, which market should I go? What should be the go-to-market strategy? It can also be, there's a recession coming up soon. We want to restructure our business, be more efficient, help us identify what should be the drivers to cut costs. Or an investor trying to acquire a company and help us to do their due diligence to see if this is really a good target to acquire. So it's very diverse, but I would say that's the analogy that I use these days to describe what we do.
Yeah, so really diverse but really efficient as well.
Yes.
Exactly.
And when you say so, a very small point, I think the consulting role can change a lot. So when you join as a junior person, you're mostly doing a lot of analysis and data analysis. As you shift to more associate manager, you're doing project management and managing clients and projects and teams. And then as partners, you are then selling work and establishing this relationship with the clients and doing the business development to grow the business. So even within consulting, it's a really diverse roles over time. So you never get
yes, but
bored.
that's very interesting to understand the whole process, right, and the whole pyramid of the company. And regarding, so we have talked about the person itself, but now about the company. So can you describe a bit the sector in Singapore? So the consultancy sector, are the different types of consultancies and what are the predominant ones here in Singapore?
Right.
A lot of questions.
Yes, no, I think
so let's go step
if I
by
had
step.
to structure the sector in Singapore, usually we divide it into like 4 parts, right, or 4 types of consulting firms. We have the big 3, we call them, the MBBs, McKinsey, Bain, BCG. These are the leading firms globally, and of course in Singapore they have a very strong presence doing a lot of strategy work. Then you have the tier 2 strategy firms where Oliver Wyman, Kearney, Roland Berger, they also are competing with the MBBs, but they usually have very unique strengths. For example, Oliver Wyman, very strong in financial services, or Kearney in operations. So in those areas, they're competing hand to hand, but again, their size tends to be a bit lower than, smaller than MBBs. Then you have the big 4 consulting firms, which are the KPMGs, Deloitte, EY, PwC. These are massive firms. They do from tax, auditing, and when they do consulting, it's mostly around implementation, so longer term projects. Even though in recent years, they've also been acquiring strategy boutiques. So we have Deloitte acquiring Monitor, PwC acquiring Strategy, and so they do, within those big companies, they have also departments that focus more on the strategy work. And then you have a wide range of boutique niche consulting firms that specialize either in a very specific sector. You have Delta Partners in telco, or you have boutiques that specialize in design consultancy, or any problem you can think of, there's a boutique consulting firm that specializes only on that.
Wow.
So yeah, I would say and in Singapore, all of these 4, being the regional hub of Southeast Asia, all of these companies have presence here, and a very large presence.
But why is that, Alex? That was my question. Why is Singapore so attractive when it comes to this kind of services companies? Why they want to settle up in Singapore?
I would say, so if you think about the business model for consulting, right, we have we're not manufacturing anything, right? So what we're selling is really just people and talent.
Okay.
And for that, so a company comes to us with really tough problems that they cannot solve themselves. So our value proposition is, okay, we're going to bring together a team of really smart, hardworking people that will, from all over the world with different experiences and expertise to help solve your problem. So why Singapore, I think all the companies come here is because it's really a very unique talent hub, right? Not only the education system in Singapore is really one of the best in the world, so you have very strong local talent, but also it's very easy to attract international talent like expats that are living here, and if they're not living here, they're very happily coming here, right?
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
the quality of life, the tax status. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why people choose Singapore. So I think that's why the access to talent and diverse talent and global talent is one of the main reasons.
Yeah. So you have described the sector in Singapore, but for the Spanish listeners, what would be the main differences between the sector in Singapore and in Spain?
Okay, that's a really good question. I haven't directly worked in Spain. I did one project there, but I've spoken to some of the colleagues who work in Spain a lot. So I'd say there are mainly three differences. Number one, you really feel when you're working here that there's more of a focus on growth, right? Europe and Spain are more mature markets, whereas here you really, for example, in Europe or Spain, you would work on optimizing a very specific process or department, whereas here, the kind of work we can do is set up from scratch an entire new digital bank in Malaysia or a different country, right? And improve accessibility to financial services in this region. So I in a way, the impact that you feel you're having, or the contribution as a consultant you're having on the economies and the sectors in this part of the world, I think is larger. Secondly, the diversity of work, right? Being in Singapore, as I said, the regional hub, you're not only serving Singaporean companies, but you're serving the entire region from Myanmar, Thailand, Malaysia. So from my perspective as a consultant, I've worked with very advanced banks here in Singapore who are on par with, say, a European or US bank, but also worked on, for example, setting up a microfinance institution in Bhutan to help alleviate rural poverty in Bhutan, right? So you get the two ends of a spectrum of really advanced, cutting-edge work, and also helping in countries that are maybe developing right now, helping them develop and grow, and maybe so it's a really diverse and well-rounded experience as a consultant here. Whereas in Spain, maybe you work mostly on either local clients or
So really enriching and really diverse in a way, and really varied.
It's really rewarding.
Wow, that's very interesting. And finally, I want to just conclude this part of the interview to having a thought about the future in the consultancy sector in Singapore. So how do you envision the future in the following years?
Okay, that's a really, I don't have the crystal ball, but I would
say, just your personal opinion.
If you go back to how I define the sector, right, I'd say there's like strategy work and then implementation. But I think this line is becoming very blurred even nowadays, and it will continue to blur even further in the future, right? Because right now, clients don't want just consultants to come in for, say, 4 weeks, deliver a very good presentation and PowerPoint and just then go. And then I think they want now us to roll up our sleeves and actually help them build solutions, not only recommend solutions. So you see, for example, that translating into the type of talent that consulting firms are looking for. It's not only problem solvers now, but they also want the software engineers, the data scientists who will process these large amounts of data, the UX designers who will build the front end of a digital bank. So they really want us to build and help create solutions and not only come and recommend. So I think that's going to be the key trend in the future, and it's going to be even harder to then define what a consultant does, because it will just be a group of very diverse people, different skills coming together. It will be very hard to say what it is. It will be very even more diverse in the future.
So maybe in some years I will interview you again, and then we will describe the sector at that moment.
Exactly, we'll have another 2.0 version of this.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Alex, for providing the insights of the consultancy sector in Singapore and the future. So we will see in some years. Thank you very much.